September 12, 2019. The phone call that would cost The Rock $1.2 billion came at exactly 4:47 a.m., interrupting his legendary workout routine in the private gym of his Virginia estate. But what seemed like the biggest financial disaster of his career would become the decision that made him truly unstoppable. The weight room was silent except for the rhythmic clang of metal against metal as Dwayne Johnson pushed through his morning deadlift routine. At 47 years old, he was still lifting more than men half his age, his 260-pound frame moving with the precision of a machine built for endurance. This wasn't just exercise, it was meditation, therapy, and business strategy all rolled into the 4 hours he carved out of every day to maintain the physical foundation of his empire. But this morning would be different. The iPhone sitting on the bench beside his water bottle began vibrating with an insistence that cut through the usual ambient noise of his workout playlist. The caller ID showed a name that made him pause mid-rep: Michael Chin, Goldman Sachs. Chin wasn't just any investment banker. He was the man who had orchestrated some of the largest entertainment deals in history, the architect behind Disney's acquisition of Marvel and Lucasfilm, the person studios called when they needed to move mountains of money with surgical precision. When Michael Chin called at 4:47 a.m., it meant something seismic was happening. Dwayne set down the weights and answered on the fourth ring, his voice still carrying the focused intensity of his workout. "Chin, this better be good. You're interrupting church." "Dwayne, I need you to stop whatever you're doing and listen carefully," Chin said, his words tumbling over each other with barely contained excitement. "Disney just made an offer that will change your life forever. Not your career, not your bank account, your actual life." The urgency in Chen's voice was unlike anything Dwayne had heard from the usually composed banker. In their 8-year professional relationship, Chen had never called this early, never sounded this wired, never opened a conversation with such dramatic language. "What kind of offer?" Dwayne asked, reaching for his towel and moving toward the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the rolling hills of his estate. The sun was just beginning to touch the horizon, painting the Virginia countryside in shades of gold that reminded him why he'd bought this particular property, 4 moments of clarity when big decisions needed to be made. "They want to buy you," Chin said, his voice dropping to an almost whisper as if the words themselves were too explosive to speak at normal volume. "Not hire you, not partner with you, not license your content. Buy you. Your entire brand, your production companies, your social media presence, your likeness rights, your voice, your image, your legacy, everything that makes Dwayne Johnson valuable to anyone, anywhere, forever." The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Dwayne had been in entertainment long enough to understand the magnitude of what Chen was describing. This wasn't a movie deal or a brand partnership. This was corporate colonization of his entire identity. "How much?" he asked, though he suspected no number could adequately capture what Chen was describing. $1.2 billion. Cash. Upfront. Plus guaranteed minimums of $100 million annually for life, plus performance bonuses, plus back-end participation in everything they create using your brand. They want an answer by Monday. Dwayne was quiet for so long that Chen finally asked if the connection had dropped. "I'm here," Dwayne said slowly, his mind racing through the implications of what he'd just heard. 1.2 billion. The largest single acquisition of a human brand in entertainment history, Chen confirmed. Bigger than any athlete endorsement deal, bigger than any entertainment contract ever signed. They're essentially offering to buy a human being's entire commercial existence. But it was more than that, and both men knew it. This was Disney acknowledging that Dwayne Johnson had transcended mere celebrity to become something unprecedented in modern entertainment, a franchise built around a single human personality that was valuable enough to own outright. "Chen, I need details. All of them. And I need them now." The emergency meeting was scheduled for 7 a.m. at Chen's Century City offices, giving Dwayne just enough time to shower, dress, and make the drive from Virginia to Los Angeles in his private jet. By the time he walked into the 47th floor conference room overlooking the city where he'd built his empire, a team of 12 specialists was waiting. Investment bankers, entertainment lawyers, tax strategists, and contract negotiators who collectively represented more than 200 years of deal-making experience. The presentation that followed was unlike anything in Hollywood history. Victoria Sterling, Disney's head of strategic acquisitions, stood at the front of the room beside a screen displaying financial projections that defied comprehension. At 52, Sterling was known throughout the entertainment industry as the woman who convinced George Lucas to sell Star Wars, who negotiated the Marvel deal that generated $18 billion in revenue, who had personally overseen more than $50 billion in entertainment acquisitions. "Mr. Johnson, she began, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had convinced billionaires to part with their life's work, what we're proposing isn't just unprecedented, it's revolutionary. We're not buying a company or a property. We're buying a universe. The screen behind her displayed a breakdown that made Dwayne's financial advisors lean forward in their chairs. Purchase price: $1.2 billion, immediate cash payment. Annual minimum guarantee: $100 million, inflation adjusted, for life. Performance bonuses: 15% of gross revenue from Rock-branded content. Creative consulting fees: $50 million annually. Family trust fund: $500 million, immediate establishment. Healthcare and security: fully funded for life, entire family. Estate planning: complete tax optimization, multi-generational wealth preservation. But the numbers, impressive as they were, represented only the surface of Disney's vision. "We see you as the next Walt Disney," Sterling continued, clicking to a slide that displayed concept art for theme park attractions, animated series, video games, and consumer products, all built around the Rock brand. Not just an entertainer, but a universe unto yourself. A character and personality so compelling that we can build entire entertainment experiences around who you are. The presentation continued for 90 minutes, each slide revealing another layer of Disney's master plan. Rock-themed roller coasters at every Disney park. Animated series featuring Dwayne's voice and likeness teaching life lessons to children worldwide. Video games where players could train with The Rock. Consumer products from protein supplements to children's toys, all bearing his name and image. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has generated $22 billion in revenue, Sterling explained. Star Wars has generated $68 billion since Disney's acquisition. But those are fictional universes. What we're proposing is the first entertainment universe built around a real human being's brand and personality. The scope was staggering. Disney projected that Rock-branded content could generate $5 to $8 billion annually within 5 years, making the $1.2 billion purchase price look like a bargain in hindsight. But then came the details that made Dwayne's stomach tighten. Disney's ownership would be complete and irrevocable. Every movie role would require their approval. Every business venture would need Disney sign-off. Every social media post would be reviewed by their brand management team. Every public appearance would be scripted and controlled. "Think of it as the ultimate partnership," Sterling said, her smile warm but her eyes calculating. "You'll never have to worry about career setbacks, market downturns, or business failures again. We'll handle all the risk, all the decision-making, all the pressure. You'll be paid like royalty while we protect and grow your brand value." The subtext was clear. Dwayne would essentially become an employee of his own image, trading creative control for financial security on a scale that defied imagination. Chin, who had been taking notes throughout the presentation, finally spoke. "The contract terms are remarkably favorable for this type of acquisition. Disney is essentially offering to guarantee your family's prosperity for the next 1,000 years. But Dwayne was focused on something else, a clause buried in Section 47 of the preliminary contract that had been highlighted by his legal team. "Creative approval authority," he read aloud. "All content, appearances, statements, and business activities utilizing the acquired brand must receive prior written approval from Disney Creative Management Division." Sterling nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. You'll never have to stress about whether a decision is right for your brand. Our team will ensure that every choice optimizes your long-term value." That's when Dwayne understood what Disney was really buying. Not just his brand, but his autonomy. The meeting ended with Disney requesting a decision by Monday, just 4 business days to consider the largest personal acquisition offer in entertainment history. As the Disney team filed out of the conference room, leaving behind bound copies of contracts thicker than phone books, Dwayne found himself alone with Chen and his core advisory team. "DJ," said Sarah Torres, his longtime manager and one of the few people who had been with him since his wrestling days, "this is a no-brainer. This is generational wealth. This is your great-great-grandchildren being set for life." Tom Rodriguez, his head of business development, was practically vibrating with excitement. "Do you understand what $1.2 billion means? Even invested conservatively, that's $60 to $80 million annually in passive income alone. You could retire tomorrow and your family would be wealthier than 99.9% of the planet." But it was Chin who articulated what everyone was thinking. "Dwayne, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've never seen an offer like this. The terms are so favorable, the guarantees so comprehensive, that I'm not sure what there is to consider." Disney is essentially offering to pay you more money than most countries have in their treasuries. The drive back to Virginia gave Dwayne 3 hours to think without interruption, without advisors, without anyone telling him what the obvious choice should be. As his driver navigated the familiar highways, Dwayne stared out the tinted windows at the landscape rushing past and tried to process what he'd just experienced. $1.2 billion. The number was so large it almost lost meaning. More money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. More money than most Fortune 500 companies were worth. More money than the GDP of small nations. But every time he tried to feel excited about the offer, he kept coming back to that clause about creative approval. About Disney's team making decisions about his brand. About becoming a highly paid spokesman for his own life. By the time he reached his estate, Dwayne had made a decision. But it wasn't the decision anyone expected. That evening, he called an emergency family meeting in the living room of their Virginia home. Lauren was there, along with his daughters Simone and Jasmine, his mother Ada, and his closest friend and business partner, Dave Rienzi. "I got an offer today," Dwayne began, his voice carrying the same serious tone he used for the most important conversations. "Disney wants to buy my entire brand for $1.2 billion. The room erupted in stunned silence, then excited chatter as the family processed what they'd just heard. $1.2 billion? Simone asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, that's life-changing," Lauren finished. "That's not just money. That's security for generations." Dwayne nodded. "It is. It would mean never worrying about money again. Never stressing about whether a movie succeeds or fails. Never having to work unless I want to." "Then why do you look like someone just told you your dog died?" Lauren asked, recognizing the expression her husband wore when he was wrestling with something much deeper than financial projections. That's when Dwayne explained the full scope of Disney's offer, not just the money but the control they would gain. Every decision filtered through Disney executives. Every opportunity evaluated by Disney's brand management team. Every aspect of his public persona owned and operated by the largest entertainment conglomerate in the world. "They're not just buying my brand," he said slowly. "They're buying my freedom to decide what that brand becomes." The conversation that followed lasted until nearly midnight. Family members weighed in from every angle: the security the deal would provide, the creative limitations it would impose, the precedent it would set for other entertainers, the message it would send about priorities and values. But it was his mother, Ada, who asked the question that cut to the heart of everything. "Baby, if you take this deal, will you still be able to look at yourself in the mirror and see the man I raised?" The next morning, Dwayne made a call that surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of gathering his advisors to negotiate terms with Disney, he called Kevin Hart. Kevin had become more than a friend over the years. He'd become a sounding board, someone whose success in entertainment had followed a completely different path but who understood the unique pressures of building a brand around your own personality. "Kev," Dwayne said when Hart answered, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. If someone offered you $1.2 billion to own your brand completely, what would you do?" Kevin was quiet for a long moment. "DJ, are you serious? Someone offered you $1.2 billion? "Disney. Yesterday. They want complete ownership of everything: my name, my image, my creative decisions, everything. And you're calling me instead of signing papers? Man, you might need to check your head." But then Kevin's tone shifted. "Wait, complete ownership? Like they would decide what movies you make, what you say on social media, what businesses you start? Everything." Another long pause. "DJ, I've known you for 15 years. You've never taken a role, made a deal, or started a business without it being your decision. Your entire brand is built on authenticity, on being genuine, on people believing that what they see is really you. Right? So if Disney owns your brand and Disney makes all the decisions about that brand, are people still seeing you? Or are they seeing Disney's version of you?" That conversation crystallized something that had been bothering Dwayne since the meeting. His entire career had been built on the connection he felt with audiences, the sense that when people saw The Rock, they were seeing something real, something authentic, something that couldn't be manufactured by a corporate committee. But under Disney's ownership, everything about his public persona would be manufactured by a corporate committee. The rest of Friday was spent in meetings with his core team, but the conversations were different now. Instead of discussing how to optimize Disney's offer, they were exploring what it would mean to turn it down. "You realize," said Tom Rodriguez, "that saying no to Disney could be seen as insulting them. They might not work with us on future projects." "And you realize," said Chin, that turning down $1.2 billion guaranteed might be the most expensive decision in entertainment history. But it was Sarah Torres who understood what Dwayne was really wrestling with. "You're not just deciding about money," she said. "You're deciding who you want to be for the rest of your career." That weekend, Dwayne did something he rarely allowed himself. He disappeared. No phone calls, no meetings, no workouts, no social media. He drove alone to a cabin he owned in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where he could think without the pressure of advisors telling him what the obvious choice should be. The cabin was sparse: a bedroom, a kitchen, a living room with a stone fireplace, and nothing else. No television, no internet, no distractions. Just silence and the space to think. For 2 days, Dwayne sat in that cabin and forced himself to confront a question he'd been avoiding. What did he actually want from his career? The answer, when it came, was surprisingly simple. He wanted to build something. Not just accumulate wealth or achieve fame, but create something that hadn't existed before. Something that proved what was possible when you refused to accept limitations. Taking Disney's offer would mean becoming incredibly wealthy, but it would mean stopping building. It would mean handing over the construction of his legacy to someone else, in exchange for a massive payment. And Dwayne Johnson had never been someone who stopped building. Sunday evening, he drove back to Virginia with a decision that would shock everyone who had spent the week assuming he would take the most lucrative offer in entertainment history. Monday morning at 9 a.m. sharp, Dwayne called Michael Chin. "Chin, I need you to call Disney and give them my answer." "Great," Chin said, relief evident in his voice. "I'll set up the signing ceremony for this afternoon." "This is incredible, DJ. You're about to become the highest paid entertainer in history." "No," Dwayne said quietly. "I'm not taking the deal." The silence on the other end of the line lasted nearly 30 seconds. "Dwayne," Chin finally said, his voice careful and controlled, "I think I misheard you. Did you just say you're not taking a $1.2 billion guaranteed offer?" "That's exactly what I said." Are you having some kind of breakdown? Do I need to call someone? Because what you just said makes no rational sense." But Dwayne's voice was steady, calm, and absolutely certain. "Chin, I need you to understand something. Disney's offer would have made me rich, but it would have made me someone else's employee. And I didn't spend 20 years building the Rock brand to hand it over to a committee of executives in Burbank." The phone call that followed was unlike anything in Chen's career. For 30 minutes, he tried every argument he could think of to change Dwayne's mind. He discussed the security the deal would provide, the legacy it would create, the sheer impossibility of ever receiving another offer of this magnitude. But Dwayne had an answer for every argument. "I didn't build this brand to sell it. I built it to prove what's possible." The reaction from Dwayne's team was swift and intense. By noon, his phone was ringing constantly with advisors, lawyers, and business partners who couldn't believe what they were hearing. "DJ, please tell me this is a negotiation tactic," Sarah Torres pleaded during an emergency conference call. "Tell me you're using this to get Disney to offer more money or better terms." "I'm not," Dwayne replied. "This isn't a negotiation. This is a decision." "A decision to turn down $1.2 billion, Tom Rodriguez said, his voice tight with disbelief. "Do you understand what you're giving up? Do you understand that this opportunity will never come again?" That afternoon, Dwayne called another family meeting. But this time, instead of asking for advice, he was announcing a decision. "I turned down Disney's offer," he said simply. The room exploded with questions, concerns, and not a small amount of panic. Even Lauren, who had been supportive of whatever decision he made, seemed stunned by the finality of it. "Dwayne," she said carefully, "that was $1.2 billion. That was our children's children being set for life." "No," he replied, his voice carrying the quiet confidence that had made him unstoppable throughout his career. "That was $1.2 billion to stop being me and start being Disney's version of me. And I'm worth more than any amount of money they could offer." But the real explanation came when he outlined what he planned to do instead. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, standing in front of his family with the same commanding presence he brought to movie sets and boardrooms. "Instead of selling to Disney, we're going to build something bigger than their offer. We're going to create an entertainment empire that doesn't just make money, it makes a difference." The plan Dwayne outlined was audacious beyond belief. Instead of accepting Disney's $1.2 billion to become their employee, he would invest his own money to compete with them. "They offered me $1.2 billion because they see the value in what we've built," he explained. "But if our brand is worth that much to them, imagine what it could be worth if we kept building it ourselves." The strategy was comprehensive and risky. Dwayne would leverage everything he owned to create a vertically integrated entertainment company that could compete with Disney, Warner Brothers, and the other major studios. Production facilities, distribution networks, streaming platforms, merchandising operations, and eventually, theme park attractions that would rival anything Disney had created. "We're not just going to build a business," he announced. "We're going to build a movement. A brand that stands for something more than profit margins and shareholder returns." The first person to speak after Dwayne finished outlining his vision was Lauren. "I'm in," she said simply. "Not because I think this will make us more money than Disney's deal, it might not. But because I married a man who builds things, not a man who sells them." One by one, the rest of the family voiced their support. Not because the financial projections guaranteed success, they didn't. But because they believed in the vision of creating something unprecedented in entertainment history. The next 18 months were the most intense period of Dwayne's career. While Disney's offer had promised security and leisure, building an empire from scratch required everything he had and more. 18-hour days became the norm. Dwayne's legendary 4 a.m. workouts were compressed into 45-minute sessions to make room for the endless meetings, negotiations, and strategic planning required to launch what would become rock entertainment worldwide. The challenges were immediate and overwhelming. Securing financing for a venture that required hundreds of millions in startup capital. Convincing talent to join an improving company instead of established studios. Building infrastructure for production, distribution, and marketing that could compete with companies that had decades-long head starts. Multiple times during that first year, the entire venture came within days of collapse. Financing deals fell through at the last minute. Key personnel were poached by competitors. Production schedules were delayed by equipment failures and permit issues. But something extraordinary began to happen as word spread throughout Hollywood about what Dwayne was attempting. Other entertainers, producers, and creative professionals who had felt constrained by the traditional studio system began reaching out, offering their services and support. The rock brand, it turned out, represented something that resonated far beyond Dwayne's individual success. It represented the possibility of creative independence, of building something on your own terms instead of accepting whatever the existing power structure was willing to offer. By the end of 2020, Rock Entertainment Worldwide had secured its first major production deal, a $200 million slate of action films that would be distributed through Netflix and Amazon Prime. By 2021, they had launched their own streaming platform, Rock TV, which attracted 15 million subscribers in its first year. But the real breakthrough came in 2022, when Disney made an unexpected approach. Victoria Sterling, the same executive who had presented the original $1.2 billion buyout offer, requested a meeting with Dwayne. But this time she wasn't coming to buy his company. She was coming to propose a partnership. "Mr. Johnson," she said, sitting across from him in the same Century City conference room where she had made the original offer, "what you've built is remarkable. Rock Entertainment Worldwide has become a legitimate competitor to every major studio in Hollywood." The numbers supported her assessment. In just 3 years, Dwayne's company had generated over $800 million in revenue, employed more than 2,000 people, and produced content that was being watched by audiences worldwide. "We'd like to propose a strategic partnership," Sterling continued. "Not an acquisition, not a buyout, but a true collaboration between equals." The partnership offer was structured as a joint venture worth $1.8 billion, 50% more than Disney's original acquisition offer. But unlike the 2019 deal, this partnership would preserve Dwayne's creative control and independence while providing access to Disney's global distribution network and theme park infrastructure. Dwayne's response was immediate and polite. "Thank you for the offer, but we're just getting started." By 2023, the wisdom of Dwayne's decision to reject Disney's original offer had become undeniable. Rock Entertainment Worldwide was valued at over $3.2 billion, making it one of the fastest-growing entertainment companies in history. But more importantly, the company had maintained the authenticity and creative freedom that had made the Rock brand valuable in the first place. Every piece of content produced bore Dwayne's genuine stamp of approval. Every business decision reflected his values and vision. The theme park project, launched in 2024, became the most ambitious undertaking in the company's history. Rock Island, Hawaii wasn't just a theme park, it was a complete entertainment destination that combined adventure attractions with fitness experiences, motivational programming, and educational content about overcoming challenges. The park's opening day attracted visitors from around the world, not just because of the cutting-edge attractions, but because it represented something unique in the entertainment industry, a place that had been created entirely according to one person's vision, without compromise or corporate committee oversight. During the opening ceremony, Dwayne stood on the stage overlooking thousands of visitors and reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. 4 years ago, he told the crowd, I was offered $1.2 billion to sell this dream to someone else. Today, I'm standing in the middle of a $4 billion company that exists because we chose to build instead of sell. The applause was thunderous, but Dwayne wasn't finished. This place exists because we believe that some things are worth more than any price tag. Freedom is worth more than money. Authenticity is worth more than security. And the chance to build something meaningful is worth more than the biggest paycheck in the world. In the years that followed, The Rock's billion-dollar mistake became a case study taught in business schools around the world. Students analyzed the decision to turn down guaranteed wealth in favor of uncertain entrepreneurship, examining the risks and rewards of choosing independence over security. But for Dwayne, the real validation came from something simpler: the knowledge that every success, every achievement, every dollar earned by Rock Entertainment worldwide was the result of decisions he had made, risks he had taken, and vision he had pursued. The man who had turned down $1.2 billion had built something worth more than money could measure. A legacy that no one could buy, control, or own except him. Today, when young entrepreneurs ask Dwayne about the secret to building something valuable, he tells them about the phone call that could have made him $1.2 billion richer, and why he hung up. The most valuable things in life aren't for sale, he explains. They're for building. And if you're willing to build instead of sell, if you're willing to risk instead of settle, if you're willing to bet on yourself instead of accepting someone else's version of your worth, then you can create something that no amount of money could ever buy. The phone call that was supposed to end his risk-taking became the moment he took the biggest risk of his life. And that risk became the foundation of an empire that proved one simple truth: sometimes the most expensive choice in the short term becomes the most valuable choice in the long term. Because while $1.2 billion would have made Dwayne Johnson rich, keeping his independence made him unstoppable. The billion-dollar mistake that wasn't a mistake at all became the decision that proved some things are worth more than any price tag. And for The Rock, freedom was worth more than all the money Disney could offer. He didn't just build a bigger business, he built a legacy that no one could ever buy. Because the most valuable things in life aren't for sale. They're for building. And Dwayne Johnson chose to build.